black shadow threatening the safety of peaceful worlds. An evil scientist who frightens children and is bent on slavery. A giant robot has seized a peaceful world and carried it off. Aloha's evil plan is to turn it into a huge private retreat for himself. Universal City Hall, here to help the people. Robert can do the job. Let's go, Robert! Jump and go!
Big money! Big prizes! I love it!
And welcome to another all-new episode of Retrovaniacs. As always, I'm Jeremy Parmentier here with Jeremy Gregory.
Hey there.
And Billy Holiday.
Hello.
This week we're going back to the PlayStation for Jumping Flash, a very, very early title on the system. But before we get to that game, I'm going to start with what I've been playing since last time, because I made a big deal last episode that I was going to have my PlayStation 4 so that I could be playing Dark Souls 3. And I was going to talk all about Dark Souls 3 and how great it is and how much I love my PlayStation 4. Well, unsurprisingly to both Jeremy and Billy, I'm about to announce I do not have a PS4.
Oh, God.
I did not buy it. I could buy it. I could just run out and grab it, but I wanted to do it without having a year's worth of a fight. So I kept trying to say, oh, look, I really need this PS4 for this reason and that reason, and none of those reasons were very good. But the ultimate reason that meant I did not have a PS4 is that, again, my job is back in a position where I'm not sure how much longer I will have it. So until I know what's going on with my job, I'm going to hold off on buying a PS4. But as an additional sign, I went to Target today, which is where I would buy that PS4 because it's right across the street, and they were out of Dark Souls 3 for PlayStation 4. So I wouldn't have had it anyway, so it was another reason not to buy it. I'm going to go with that as why I don't have it. But instead, I was able to actually focus on an old game, and I already told Jeremy and Billy this, but I have now beaten a second game, 2 episodes in a row. I finished Pandora's Tower for the Wii. I really, really liked it, actually. I have to say, if that was a game that came out without being part of Operation Rainfall or having all the, I don't want to say it's promotional, push behind it, but there was definitely a lot of internet push behind that game coming out, so it did get some notice when it came out, but I think it would have been one of those unknown gems. It's really, really good, but when you first play it, you're kind of like, yep, I've played a million games like this. It's a lot like Zelda, but not quite as good, but the bosses are way better than most of the stuff in Zelda. I think they're very inventive. I enjoyed it very much, and then I started playing Persona 4 again because I hate free time.
Apparently.
Yeah.
Well, my only goal for this playthrough is not to date the band girl, so I figure I only have to go so far before I've met my goal for Persona 4. But actually, after playing all these other role-playing games, I realized Persona 4 may be my favorite role-playing game of the last maybe 15 years. I love everything about it. It's a little goofy at first, especially when you're just doing the long parts where you're essentially just hanging out with high school kids. But the actual system to the game and the other, the way you build up your personas, I think that's the most interesting RPG system I've used in a long time. And it just hits all my buttons for collecting things and powering things up. I'm a big fan. So I'm playing through that again. I've already put in like 20 hours on this playthrough, and I started it since last episode.
I'm really surprised you just didn't go out and start hunting down Persona 3, because it's pretty similar to Persona 4.
The only thing I've heard about Persona 3 that made me hold up on it was that you'd never get to control all the other characters. Like in Persona 4, they automated setting is for all the other characters but yourself to be automatically run by the computer, but you can change that, and I do that immediately. I don't like having characters I don't control in my team, and apparently you can't change that in Persona 3. I don't know if that would be a deal breaker, but it definitely makes some of the boss fights I would find almost impossible if I couldn't control what they were all doing.
I don't know, it's been so long since I played that game. I really thought I could control my other people, but I don't know. But it's still a great game. If you like Persona 4, you should definitely check out Persona 3 at some point.
I will have to find a copy, or I think it's probably on PlayStation Network, but I'll find it somewhere, and I will play it, and it will be amazing. Whenever I get that PS4 6 months from now. So what have you been playing, Jeremy?
Oh, God, I don't know. I forgot to even think about this.
Well, I never ask it, so I understand not being ready with an answer. But did you guys get Dark Souls 3, either of you?
I did not. The only thing that entertained me more than the thought of actually owning that is you just going to that Target every day and like staring longingly at the glass, just hoping that you can get this PlayStation 4, but
I'm not going to lie, I've done it.
That you weren't able to get Dark Souls 3 at this point, as much as you were looking forward to it.
I will have it. I mean, there's no maybe on it. I will have it. There's just a slight snag with my employment situation that I will know this week whether or not I still have a job. So at the end of this week, I may have it. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Yeah. I say that every week, and every week somehow that job gets worse. So we'll see what happens.
All right. No, I really haven't been playing anything at all. The last couple of weeks I've really been busy with work and getting some more stuff done for the site, because I've really been kind of not doing as many videos as I had been. And since we're quickly approaching the 1-year anniversary of actually doing this thing, I've been trying to get some stuff together. So I haven't had too much time to play games. I guess I've been kind of messing around with the Division a little bit. Still trying to get up to level 30 when I got some time. I know Billy maxed out a couple of weeks ago, but I am still trying to get through that when I've got a few minutes. That game is extremely repetitive. I do enjoy extremely a good extreme repetitive game where you're just doing the same thing over and over again. A lot of people don't like that, but I genuinely love doing games like that. It doesn't bother me.
Well, I think especially when it's as well done as the Division is, it doesn't seem like a grind or a chore at any point in time.
No, it doesn't. And I love the environment and everything about it. I love kind of exploring and getting around New York City and seeing what's around the corner, which is not surprisingly just more buildings. But it still looks really good. And I've always, my entire time playing that, I just really love walking around that city. I love New York City. I just don't ever want to be in New York City. So this is the perfect solution for me, just playing a video game with a very well-rendered version of Manhattan to walk around in. But besides that, no, I really haven't been playing much at all. I've been kind of focusing on doing stuff for a website and a YouTube channel that no one watches. So that is my time spent.
Well, I think we could say the same thing for the podcast. I think we have 7
True.
listeners, but
I
these
know.
7 people seem to listen every episode, so I'm very appreciative of all 7 of you. Billy, what have you been doing since last time?
I'll tell you, not too awful much. I guess it's just work. By the time I get home, I'm just I sit down with every intention of playing something. I've got a controller in my hand, and next thing you know, I have apparently been dozing off over the last hour or so. This has happened to me most nights. I've pulled a couple of 20-hour shifts over the last 2 weeks. So I've been down and out and just haven't had the motivation really to play anything. But I reach points like that where I pop one game in, I play a few minutes, like, I don't want to play this. I pop another one in, I do the same thing over and over until I decide maybe I just want to watch a movie instead. And I spent most of my 2 weeks like that. I mean, I played the game that we are reviewing here probably more than anything else. But I picked up, and I had been meaning to buy this for the Xbox One, but it actually popped up as one of the free games for this month, was that Sunset Overdrive, which I didn't know. It seemed like it got kind of mixed reviews, and I didn't know if it was one of those style over substance type games. But I've been playing that, and it's good fun. I've really enjoyed it. And there was another random free game on the Xbox One, Lords of the Fallen, which it seems to be Dark Souls-esque. I can only imagine that's why they released it this month. It's very similar in style. I played that a little bit here and there. And yeah, I've just been roaming around on the Division. They've recently added a few things. And I even hopped back on that Destiny not too long ago.
Yeah, I actually did too. I played a little bit of that update, but haven't really delved into it too far.
It's so exciting. I've never been more excited by a game updating with such a minor things. I immediately got on there, opened a package up, and now I have some I guess kind of armor to wear an arm shoulder type piece, and it glows red. And I was so thrilled by the fact that this armor glows red now. That I wore that thing around. Yeah, I mean, they've added just enough stuff, just enough to really sucker me in. my light level, which after you reach the max level is how you level up after that. Finally moved up by 1.
Oh.
Yeah, that's about 4 or 5 months in the making. I was very thrilled with that, but I decided I better quit while I was ahead of myself. But I have played a ton of the game we're reviewing tonight.
Well, I forgot one more thing I've been playing. I was able to turn in 1,000 my Nintendo points for playing so much Miitomo. And I have the Twilight Princess Zelda Picross game on my 3DS. I'd never played Picross before. I mean, I'd tried it at some point because it wasn't like a totally alien game to me, but I had never really spent a lot of time on it. But I'm really enjoying that. But that's kind of like a good bathroom game. So I didn't want. There's not a whole lot to talk about. It's a good version of Picross, I suppose, with Zelda music playing in the background, and that's pretty much it. But hey, for free to just play Miitomo for a couple hours total, not a bad deal.
Oh, of course, it goes without saying we've all have been playing Miitomo nonstop over the last couple of weeks.
Oh, I'm sure. This podcast
it continues to be bewildering fun, and I just don't quite understand why, because of how little there is to do in that stupid little app. I actually need to re-download it because I had to reformat my phone last week after it decided to just stop working for some reason. And I need to download that game again because I've been getting those urges to get on there and answer some questions and ask me what my favorite jelly is or something.
I can't go to bed without telling her what my favorite jelly is.
It needs to know these things. Somebody's got to know. I've never told anybody these things. So this stupid app hopefully can spread the things that I love long after I'm gone.
It's helping with my social anxiety disorder.
It really is. You can't just go out to a restaurant and sit down, and nobody just looks at you and says like, "Hey, what's your favorite fruit? What's your favorite color? How many people do you expect to date?" But Miitomo does that for you. It scratches that itch of asking the most insanely awkward questions just right out of the blue.
And I just can't wear a ninja sword into any restaurant either.
That's true. I could not wear a giant Tyrannosaurus head into most places in public without being escorted away or something.
Well, thankfully, we did all have time. It seems like we're all very busy this week, but we did have time to play this week's game, Jumping Flash, for the Sony PlayStation.
Jumping Flash, this is one that I had really pushed for, and as excited as I was about it, and the fact that I have clocked hours into this game when I was younger, I never owned nor rented this game. I believe from our conversation before we started, everyone's familiar with that demo disc that came with the early PlayStation consoles, and I had Jumping Flash on there, and I played that thing endlessly. It gives you one level. From what I can recall, and I loved it. I really loved that. I probably played it more than anything I owned for the console for quite some time, but I could never find it anywhere to rent. And it's another one of those bizarre things. I couldn't find it anywhere to rent nor buy at any point in time, and I just kind of forgot about it over the years until recently.
Well, yeah, I had thought it was a launch title for the PlayStation 1. But then doing my 5 seconds of research for the podcast, I found out it is not a launch title. It was that demo. The PlayStation Pix demo that came with the first shipments of PlayStations had playable versions of ESPN Extreme Sports, Toshinden, Wipeout, I think, and then Jumping Flash. Now, the other 3 games, Wipeout wasn't out at launch either, but it came out shortly after and was pretty awesome, so that was a good demo to have. Jumping Flash was definitely the oddball game on there. It was not... It's not a visually pleasing game as far as if you look at a still shot of the game, you're like, oh, great, it's one of those early 3D all-polygon kind of boxy games. Not that interesting to look at in that aspect on a still shot. It really isn't. But actually playing it, it was not like anything I'd ever played up to that time. Really, I mean, you have to remember that this was before Super Mario 64 because the N64 wasn't out yet. It was before a lot of the really fully 3D games that we've become used to. So to have a game where there is not just a 3D going back and forth like Doom, but like a fully a height depth that you had to worry about at all times, that you really could feel like you were way above the action most of the time and had to fall down on things. I don't know. I thought it was pretty great. I do remember the demo, and that's why I thought it was a launch game. But yeah, you're right. I probably played that demo an easy 100 times.
My experience was before the PlayStation launched, the media play that was next to where we used to live had that demo disc running at a PlayStation kiosk. And anytime we went to that media play, I would instantly go to that kiosk to play one of those demos. And I actually spent most of my time with the other games because I didn't know what Jumping Flash was, and I had a limited amount of time before my dad came trying to find me and get me out of the store. But I played Jumping Flash one time just to see what it was, and it was amazing. I mean, it looks like shit now. But back then, actually having a giant level, a 3D level that you could jump around in and, maneuver around. And it was amazing. And I quickly discovered that you could jump really high up onto these platforms. And I got to a pretty high up platform and did this jump off of it. And whenever you jump in Jumping Flash, once you reach your apex, the camera looks down so you can see what you're going to jump onto. And when it did that, I almost threw up because I'm scared of heights anyway. And that was so convincing to me as a stupid child that I just about lost it right in the middle of media play and upchucked all over that stupid kiosk. And at that point, I knew I had to have the game at some point, and eventually I did. But that was my first experience.
Well, when it came out, I had worked at the Electronics Boutique during the PlayStation launch. That was my first year there. To date myself, I graduated high school in 1995, and I started working immediately in Electronics Boutique. I didn't graduate high school, and that was what I was going to do in life, but that's just the job I happened to get. And I worked there for quite a long time, but the first major launch I was there for was the Saturn and then the PlayStation. And when this game came out, we may have gotten 2 copies of it, maybe 3, and I know that we sold some of them, but it wasn't a big seller. It didn't fly off the shelves. I don't remember that anyone I knew owned it. It wasn't until it showed up as a PS1 classic on the PlayStation Network that I was able to finally pick this up and play it, which is how I played it for this review. It was probably the first game that looked like it was for kids on the PlayStation. The PlayStation launch library was heavy in sports. It was heavy in, it had Toshinden was one of their launch titles. They had a lot of games that were supposed to be targeted at older kids and young adults, people that they thought the PlayStation's a serious system for adults and older people. It's not a system for kids. So this was the first game that actually came out that was really looked like a kid's game, and I think that's why nobody bought it.
It's very Japanese, obviously. As soon as you look at it, you can tell this is from Japan. And, Japan wasn't trying to do the whole super edgy PlayStation kind of stuff. They were definitely not Red E, if anybody gets that. But, it was refreshing to see what it's like from coming from like the 16-bit the consoles that we were playing on, because all of those games were mostly just Japanese. I was kind of used to that, the setting and the design characters and the wackiness that Japanese games have. So seeing Jumping Flash, I was like, yes, this is what I want from the PlayStation. This is how I want games to look. I want the kind of nice, colorful, fun games that are just wacky. And there really wasn't any. Jumping Flash was one of the, one of the only one for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, it was pretty much that's the only kind of experience with a game of that sort you had on the PlayStation for quite some time. Because they tried real hard there at the beginning for that serious push, and I think that's why I took the Jumping Flash so much. Like Jeremy said, it was more accustomed to what I was used to with some of those those really just completely Japanese, off the wall Nintendo, Super Nintendo games you would get. But yeah, I mean, it was a long time before the PlayStation kind of, loosened up just a little bit.
I guess since we didn't really explain the game too well, other than saying that it was a game where you jump really high and it was a 3D platformer, but it's first person. So unlike a game like Super Mario 64 that would come out later, where you'd see Mario behind you most of the time, and it would be 3D environment, but you would still see your character in front of you. This is one where it's a first person platformer, but in full 3D. I'd never played anything quite like it. If Doom or Quake, again, those are all first-person action games, and they did have some jumping and some depth to Quake, but it wasn't the same thing. Like the platforming was not the point in either of those games. This was a much slower game, but it was definitely based a lot more on what could you jump to, how high can you jump and get to certain platforms you need to get to the objectives of the level. The game is 6 worlds long. Each world has 3 levels. And the first 2 levels of each world are open world platform sections where you're supposed to find 4 jet pods. You collect all the jet pods and you find the exit afterwards, and you go to the next level. It's more about, there are enemies in the level, but it's not as much about avoiding enemies as it is finding the right platforms to jump on to get to the platforms you need to get the jet pods on. But it's all done in first-person 3D, so you can only see so far, and you don't see where the jet pods are. Like, there will be a little symbol on the screen that says, oh, jet pod here, but only when you're so close to it. So a lot of it is exploring this fairly large, at that time massively large, 3D area to jump around in. I mean, now you play a game like Grand Theft Auto 4 or 5, any of those games with a giant world map, and this doesn't seem big at all, But this game at the time, to consider it to go anywhere you want on the screen, jump as high as you can get to, it was open and pretty incredibly large for the time. So it was a lot of exploring every corner of the map to find these jet pods. I really like that.
And the levels really, when you come back and look at them now, in terms of the length of them, the width, they're not the biggest levels, but these levels really stack up. I mean, these are some tall levels, and that's just something before this game you had never encountered. And I want to pay this game one big compliment. As a first person game, you can actually see your character's feet, which was so refreshing to me, because it seems like nowadays first person games, I just think it's lazy that you can't. When you look down, there's nothing there. On this one, it gives you a good sense of space. This game I was blown away from it. And playing it now, I still was. That a game like this that offered you this much kind of freedom to get around was out all that time ago. Because there wasn't really, in terms of, running and something focused on first-person running and platforming, I think probably Mirror's Edge, which was fairly recent title, is the next time they even tried anything like that.
It's really weird. I mean, the game, back when the PlayStation launched, if there were any first-person shooters, like we said, they were very self-serious, sci-fi kind of stuff. Putting out there like a platformer that this is, it is just a complete platformer. It was really weird, and none of us had really played anything like that. As I never did anyway. This was my first experience with a 3D platform game, where you had total freedom of movement and go anywhere you want. And I'm amazed that it's still as fun as it is today. Because if anyone has played a lot of PlayStation games and come back to play them now, they are terrible. Like, they don't hold up at all. As amazing as Toshinden was when we played it back in the day, playing it now it's awful. And that goes for, I'd say, a good majority of those old PlayStation games. But for as early as Jumping Flash was, and how much fun it still is, I think it speaks volumes for just how well it was designed.
Yeah, this is a game where I can say I genuinely had a good time. I had a lot of fun playing this game. And there are games I like playing through now, but I can't say I really have fun with them. I get through them. You're stressed out the entire time because the games are so bleak, and so serious now. And and sometimes it's just the sheer difficulty. You're struggling to get through the game. But this is one I just kind of was able to relax and play through. And I have to say that the difficulty, probably a little too far on the easy end. But yeah, this was one you can just have a real good time with.
Well, yeah, the difficulty is, I wouldn't say it's an issue because I don't think their goal was to make a game that was necessarily hard, because I think they wanted you to see everything. I think the goal was to make a game that you didn't feel even that rushed. I mean, there's a time limit on the levels, but it's a 10-minute time limit in the first playthrough, and I can't imagine in any of those levels going even close to running out of time. I mean, I didn't even pay attention to the clocks at all, and I never was even close to out of time. I mean, I don't believe any of those levels could have used a time constraint and made it a big deal. It really did seem like it was just to stop you from doing, I don't know, just dicking around, I guess, or at least give you some kind of goal. But what I liked was, a lot of those 3D world games now are considered sandbox games, and I think this is a good version of that kind of game where it's not about making it difficult and giving you all these ridiculous little tasks to do. It's just here's a big open world. You got to find these 4 things, but other than that, have fun. And I like that. I did enjoy it. It's a very short game. I don't think anyone would have spent, if you really just sat down and just tried to find all the jet pods and get to the next level, you probably could beat this game in maybe 45 minutes. I mean, it's not a long game, and that might be taking your time. You might be able to plow through this thing in 20 minutes. It's incredibly short. I get six worlds with 3 levels each, and the last level of each world is a boss, which we can get to the bosses in a minute. They probably aren't the best part of this game by any means. But the levels where you explore generally are, it's just fun. I just enjoyed again, trying to jump around and see where you can get to. And the music the whole time is like this almost happy carnival music, but not annoying. Something about it worked perfectly. It's upbeat, and I'm sure I'm going to play a bunch of clips of it because that was the first thing when I turned it on. I was like, oh, I remember the music of this game. How great is this? And it at no point did I get annoyed by it.
Yeah, it's just got some good video game music.
Yeah. I mean, and it comes close to that line. I think if you just heard a brief clip, you're like, oh, that's going to get old. That's going to get annoying after a while. But it never does. I think it's because just the game it is attached to is so much of a joy to play. However, it's an excellent game for jumping around and platforming. But in some stages, they take that away, and for the most part. And this becomes almost a strict first-person shooter. In tight corridors, and I gotta tell you, it goes from fun and the thrill of exploring to just wanting to get that level over with.
Thank God there's not too many of those levels in the game.
No, they're few and far between.
Yeah, but still, as soon as they show up, oh man, they are terrible. I don't understand why they wanted to put those in there. I mean, because they are just a straight up first-person shooter maze, and they're not good mazes. And it's not fun to fight. Obviously, combat in this game is not the main attraction here. It's very much just shoot the bullets at something and it dies in a couple of hits. Nothing is trying overly hard to kill you in this game. So once you strip away the thing that this game does amazingly well, which is the platforming all over these amazing stages, then you've got a hell of it is just so boring and just not fun at all.
It's jumping flash, and there are levels where you literally cannot jump.
Yeah.
It's only 2 levels, I believe, and the second one not as bad as the first, but that first non-jumping maze level, which is level 2-2, is the point where, even though I did love playing this game and I was going to get through that, I got to that level and I was like, oh, if there's a lot of these, I may not finish this game because it was it's not enjoyable. Your character, when you're jumping, your control is good. The control to actually jump up high and land where you want to land is fairly good. But when you're in those tight corridors, that's when you feel like you're moving just a box. You feel like you're pushing a box through a bunch of corridors. You don't turn well. You don't angle well. It's really hard to aim at things. You can't dodge because you don't strafe. You literally just have to, like, try to back up slowly. I mean, try to play a game like Doom with no ability to go, to strafe left and right. You just have to turn and back up and go forward. I mean, it's not enjoyable. And so, the speed of this when you're walking around is slow enough and awkward enough. And at least for me, a couple times, once I got hit, or maybe it was when I tried to jump, or I don't know what it was, but it was almost like every time I walked, it would act like it was a little jump, and my character would look down at the ground as he was walking over and over again. So I couldn't even target things to shoot them when I needed to. But thankfully, much like every other level in the game, you can plow through those 2 levels in under 2 minutes. So if you can just get through the terrible, maze levels, which again, there's only 2 of them, and only the first of the 2 was that bad. The rest of the game, I think, is actually pretty fun, including the bosses, which are interesting looking most of the time, but generally not that inventive.
No, they're interesting looking. I mean, they vary pretty wildly, but the technique in which you beat them really doesn't. Most of them you can get by just jumping up high, bouncing off their head, shooting down at them, and just repeating that.
The bosses are next to the first person stages is my least favorite part of the game. I mean, they mix things up pretty well, and it's it's nice to have them, but they don't really offer really any kind of challenge at all. So, I mean, it's cool that they're there, but I honestly would have rather just had another regular stage than have to deal with one of these bosses.
Well, I think that's kind of a relic of the time. You have to assume a game like this is going to have bosses in it. Every platformer, up to then had, even if it's not a boss you fight, at the end of every Mario world, you have to somehow get by or find a way to get rid of Koopa. You can't just go to play 4 levels and be done. There has to be something. So I understood the need to have a boss. And again, I think a lot of this game, I know part of the game was the tech demo anyway, but even just to flesh it out more, you want to show off what the system can do. This is an early game, so you want to have, the bosses are fairly large compared to you. It's kind of nice when you have the ability to jump so high to have a boss. Like there's a boss that is some sort of like a giant genie or inflatable clown or something, but it's in a bunch of teacups, and the teacups will spin around the room, and meanwhile, like, one arm will come out of this thing, or one head will come out of a teacup, and you're supposed to destroy all these teacups, but each part of the body you're trying to attack, you have to attack a slightly different way, although it's still a variant of just jumping as high as you can and shooting at it. But it was a neat-looking boss. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that if you were going to say on, oh, look at what the system can do. It can manage all these things at once, and they're all unique, pieces. They all move independently, and it's all over the screen, and again, I can see it as why you'd have bosses in this game, to show off what you could do with bosses in another game. But yes, to actually play through the bosses, even the last boss, who is the most interesting of all of them, I don't think I died on anything.
No, and don't get me wrong. I mean, they're one of my least favorite parts of the game. But still, when you saw them back in the day, they were amazing. I was too shocked and just my jaw was dropped all over the floor by even just this game as a whole. So, back then I didn't care, but playing it today, that was one of the things I was like, man, these aren't really hard at all.
Yeah, they are short at least. It's not a game where you ping away at a boss for 6 hours and finally it goes down. I mean, you kill them pretty quickly, but you still get enough time to look at them and see them to say, yeah, that's kind of a cool boss, and then move on. So after you finish the game, because it is a pretty short game, you'll go through all 6 worlds, all 6 worlds. After you beat the game, Extra Mode unlocks. Extra Mode lets you play through the same exact levels, but all the objectives are moved around. So I only played through the first couple to see it, but I thought it was a neat additional bonus, kind of like a second quest on Zelda, but nowhere near as involved. But you get to play the game again. Everything's hidden in a different spot. Sometimes there's different enemies added to to the levels to make it more interesting, I guess. But it's kind of a nice touch. And then if you can complete the entire game without continuing, you earn Super Mode. Super Mode lets you jump. Normally, you can jump 3 times high, which gets you to half the platforms, but not all. You can jump 6 times high as in Super Mode, which I imagine probably gets to the point where you jump so high that you can no longer see the ground.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool though, because that's what I liked about it. I felt like even playing it now, yes, it's not a pretty game to look at, but because it's so basic and it's just polygons pretty much, and it's all just big flat items that you're not flat, they're 3-dimensional, but it's 3 dimensions made of big boxes, the old kind of 3D, that it actually scales and moves very well. So it does feel like it has depth. It doesn't chunk up really bad when you jump super high and fall down, towards the ground. I felt like it actually felt like it could handle that depth piece very, very well, better than a lot of games, actually, even current games. So I think it still plays very, very well. It just doesn't look, the best. And again, those tunnels are awful. But I think it's one of the few PlayStation games that are fully 3D that still hold up pretty well. A lot of the 3D games really did not hold up extremely well. I'm a big role-playing game fan, and trying to play through the original versions of Final Fantasy 7 through 9 it's a chore. They're not bad. Well, 8's a terrible game, but 7 and 9 are not bad games at all. 9's one of my favorite games. But when you try to play it now, as opposed to playing Final Fantasy 6 or 4, which are definitely more primitive looking, but they still look way better than 7, 8, or 9. The polygon characters and the flat photo backgrounds, it did not age very well at all. And this seems to still hold up pretty good.
I think because it's just a very simple, cartoonish looking game. They're not trying to be all realistic and crazy like stuff like Siphon Filter was, which, good God, if you look at that game now, you can barely look at it before you just have to claw your eyes out. But, Jumping Flash it's a very simple game. The stages, they don't try to do too much. They're all fairly small within their limits, to where, nothing is hidden in fog or anything like that too much. So it still holds up, and I wish more games like that on the PlayStation would have went for a more simple look, because it really helps the game's playability these days.
Yeah, I think out of the early, of course this wasn't a launch, but it's an early PlayStation title. This one probably has the most, or it's up there as far as longevity goes, as far as being able to pick it up today. And yeah, and it's a shame too, because at the time, I recall playing a lot of excellent PlayStation games early on. You can go back and play Nintendo fine today, Super Nintendo fine, Genesis, everything fine. But those early PlayStation games, they just, I tried to, I got the original PlayStation back out not too long ago, and I still had that Toshinden, and I popped it in there. Oh, it's god-awful, because they're trying to be too realistic with it, I think is the trouble. And the people on there, they look awful. And I've had that trouble with a lot of games. That first Twisted Metal even is...
Ooh.
Yeah, it's rough.
That one looks bad now, but...
It's so bad.
This still looks good. I don't think we have mentioned in this entire podcast that you are playing as a robot bunny with a rocket booster as a tail.
That was another first for me.
That was really interesting. When you beat a stage, it zooms out, and you can see your character, and it kind of goes around the character. And that was about the time that as a kid, I was like, this game's weird. Like, what am I even playing? And I think that was this was one of the very first games that really got me appreciated in the weird wackiness that Japanese developers can bring to games.
Maybe it's that I've just been doing this for too long in general, and that I worked in a gaming store and saw all the stuff that came out on the later PlayStation and Saturn and PlayStation 2, where that kind of became the norm for a while. I don't think anything now seems too, unless it's a bizarre dating sim, I don't find anything that comes out now too weird and too Japanese. That's just how it is. Like I said at the beginning, I'm playing Persona 4 again. That's the kind of game that if I would have handed it to my 10-year-old self and said, here, play this game, I would have looked at myself and said, what are you playing, old man? This game is a weird Japanese dating sim where you're in high school and then eventually you fight weird demons. What is wrong with you? Go outside more. Do something else. But I think that this, I didn't think to bring it up because it just seems normal to me now. It's like, yeah, of course you're a giant metal robot. Or metal rabbit. Why wouldn't you be?
Yeah, I was sitting here just being like, what if somebody's like hearing us talk about this, and what are they even picturing this game to be? But yeah, you do. Your character is a jumping Flash. He is a robot rabbit with a rocket booster, and you go around shooting other weird animals that make no sense. They kind of look like animals, but they don't. They just look like a weird fever dream that a developer had and drew it on a napkin, and there it was in the game. But it's it for the time, it was extremely strange because we didn't get a lot of that weird Japanese stuff back then for a long time. I don't think it really started until, I don't know. I think the next one I really remember was like Parappa the Rapper. I was like, ooh, geez, this is crazy. Like this, I never expect to play something like that on my American PlayStation. But Jumping Flash, yeah, it's definitely weird, and I wish there was more of that kind of game in the early PlayStation game days.
Well, there was a sequel. There was Jumping Flash 2 that came out. I had not played it, but apparently it's very similar to this. Have either of you played Jumping Flash 2?
I owned it.
Oh.
I think I was the second and only other person in America that bought Jumping Flash 2 when it came out because I was such a huge fan of this one. And it is more of the same, but it actually ups the craziness more so than this one. If you thought this one was kind of weird playing it, then Jumping Flash 2 just jumps right off the edge with the craziness. It's basically a giant alien man. He's incredibly fabulous looking, and he is going around stealing planets, and that sets up the exact same level progression as this one. You go to 6 worlds. Each one has 3 planets. It continues to have a few of the first-person stages, which are still terrible. But for the most part, the game just kind of seems like an add-on to this game besides the weird and crazy story. So if you like Jumping Flash 1, I highly suggest checking out Jumping Flash 2 because not only for the extreme insanity of that story, and it is crazy. It's just more of the same, and it's a lot more polished than the first game as well. So definitely check that one out.
Well, that's what I remember. Is it did look much cleaner than this. This, like we've said, is not the prettiest game, but it moves very well, which is nice. And then there actually was a third game that only came out in Japan. That wasn't even called Jumping Flash 3. I think it was called Robot Mondieu is the name of that. I had to look that up just now. And that was another one that apparently they took the same level design, but instead of going through and trying to find the jet pods, it would be open worlds where you had different objectives. So it would be, an open world where you had to, find 7 candy canes or whatever the mission would be. But it changed the missions up for each time, and apparently it was not as popular as the first 2. But one we never played, and I think at some point I'd like to find it because I do like this game. I think this game, we've said it holds up really well. I like that it's short. I like that I was able to sit down with it for a couple hours and really feel like I got my fill of it, but not that I was tired of it. I'd play it again. In fact, I did start playing the extra levels just to see, and I enjoy them. Even though it's the same map, the fact that I had to find the items in other places, I want to play through it again. There's not many games I can play back-to-back like that.
For what it is, I think it's the perfect length. I mean, if you added too much more to this, it would just kind of get old after a while because it doesn't seem like it should be a very long game. And the sequel is actually just maybe a few minutes longer than this one. So I appreciate the brevity of this one, and I'm not going to complain too much about the how short it is or how easy it is because I just had fun playing it. I really still just have fun jumping around in all of those levels and getting to the objectives. Sometimes even just finding new ways to get to them because of how open it is and how easy it is to jump around those stages.
Yeah, and I can't agree more with what both of you said. And, the bad in the game, those couple of, the more first-person shooter type levels, the lack of difficulty, the bad parts of it, they're not that bad. The levels, the boss fights are pretty, the first-person shooter levels, boss fights, they're pretty lackluster, but they go by quick. You're left with a very, very enjoyable game. And with the things we've been reviewing on here, damn, we needed this. Bad.
It's a palate cleanser.
We've been crawling through the desert, and we finally got a swig of water.
I think actually the sadder part is that each of the games we review, except for Bayou Billy, is a game that one of the three of us really likes, and the other two are like, well, clearly the other people on this podcast have horrible taste in games. But this one we could all agree, an excellent game. Highly recommended. It aged pretty well. Unless you completely hate platformers, then I guess this would not be for you. But then you probably are also not listening to retro game podcasts.
Yeah, and I would like to inform the people that do listen to this, we all get really scared when we discover that all of us like a game.
Yeah.
Because then we honestly expect what we have to say will be less than 10 minutes long for a podcast. So, but hey, Jumping Flash is great. I don't care if this was a 10-minute long podcast or not. I just want more people to know about Jumping Flash.
Actually, we've managed to make this one last so far almost 45 minutes. And that's good. We actually had something positive to say about a game. I think we've all agreed it's an excellent choice with some minor flaws, but still well worth checking out because it's not like much else out there. We did not have a listener question that we chose to use for this week, either because we did not have one or they were all, what does that mouth do? So we decided instead, I thought this was a launch title. And so I started doing some research into make sure it was a launch title because I didn't want to say it was a launch title when it in fact was not. And it turns out it wasn't a launch title. It came out a couple months later, but it was that demo that it came with that led me to remember it as a launch title. So then I had to figure out what were the original PlayStation launch titles, and then it made me think about, what system launches was I actually excited about. I wasn't really old enough to, not that I didn't know about I remember when Nintendo came out, but at that point, video games were just like a thing, not really the thing. And then when Genesis and Super Nintendo came out, they were a big deal, but there was no internet. There wasn't, I wasn't old enough to have a job or money or go get things on my own. So it was like, oh, I really want this thing I saw in this magazine and I'll beg for it. But it's not like, by this era of video games, the Saturn, the PlayStation, the Nintendo 64, and beyond, when systems came out, it was a huge deal. We did midnight launches at my store. I definitely got really into them, but there were one or two that really stood out and were I don't want to say landmarks in my life because I'd like to pretend I have more going on than that, but I'm not going to pretend that on this podcast. So landmarks in my life. The PlayStation was one of them because it was the first time I really was blown away by a system that I had never heard a thing about. I mean, I knew about it from working that the system was coming and I had seen previews and it looked great, but it was, at this point, if it wasn't Sega or Nintendo, it was a failing system. And so the fact that Sony was going to put a system out, you're like, oh, great. Well, just like Philips with the CDI and, NEC with the TurboGrafx and all these other games that would come out, I think I'm just going to stick with Sega and Nintendo. But the Saturn was so disappointing that when I saw the first handful of games on PlayStation, the big one being Toshinden that Billy mentioned earlier, my mind was blown. That game at the time looked incredible. It was the first fully 3D fast fighter I'd ever played. Virtua Fighter was out, but that was a much slower and kind of technical fighter. This was like lightning, and it looked. I mean, comparatively, it was super fast at the time, and everything was super showy and flashy. I mean, Virtua Fighter was probably a far better fighting game, but a lot of the time it was just blocking punches and kicks. This was like, oh no, there are all these super moves, and it does all these like little videos when you do certain things. I thought that was incredible at the time, and so when the PlayStation came out, I was blown away. But then I looked at the titles, and I can't remember any of these games aside from Toshinden, which we've talked about, and then the ports of things that were already existing games. They had a port of Rayman, they had a port of NBA Jam, a port of a Raiden collection, and then the ones I do remember, but was like, oh, that's why I don't remember these games. Street Fighter the movie was a launch title, which is the worst possible Street Fighter game. Total Eclipse Turbo, which I had forgotten about completely because it's a 3DO game. And ESPN Extreme Games, which was one that was on the demo disc that I tried to watch a demo of the demo disc, just a video of the demo disc to remember it, and which, by the way, that video is incredible. It has the most 90s theme music you've ever heard.
Yeah.
But it the ESPN Extreme Games, what a horrible game! It looked like kind of like a really really digitized Road Rash clone, but on rollerblades. Oh, not good at all. But I don't remember any of those games being good except for Toshinden, but I remember when the system came out, it blew my mind how good it looked compared to everything else.
It was a big deal. I mean, one of the best things that Sony did with the PlayStation launch was it got out there to every major store and put that stupid kiosk in them so that everyone could see Toshinden. And that was the one that seemed like it was always up and running. And if you ever found one of those kiosks without at least like 4 or 5 people standing around it just gawking at this horrible fighting game, the store must have been closed, because it was extremely rare not to find just people crowding around it to see how good those games looked. And the Saturn was already out, so you would think, well, the Saturn must be seeing, the similar praise and people just going nuts on it. But those early Saturn games looked awful. Like, Panzer Dragoon looked good, but compared to like Virtua Fighter and that terrible port of Daytona, I mean, compared to those launch PlayStation games, Saturn looked 5 years behind at that point. Nobody wanted to pay any attention to those games compared to the nice looking, super flashy pieces of shit that were on the PlayStation. That was the big launch for me. PlayStation was huge for me. That's the one I remember the most. I didn't get it till Christmas, so it had already been out for a couple of months. And so I remember my first job, every time I would get paid, I would just go to the Target and buy whatever games they had available. So I ended up with that totally awful ESPN Extreme Games. Probably played it for way more than anyone should ever play ESPN Extreme Games. Same with Toshinden. But there were some really, really good, not launch titles, but they kind of came out really quick afterwards. I remember the port of Doom for the PlayStation being amazing. Mm-hmm. I played Wipeout a lot. Wipeout is still to this day one of my favorite racing games of all time. Even that NFL Game Day for the PlayStation, that was an amazing football game for the time. It obviously wasn't Madden, but it looked amazing and it played really well. I'm not even a big fan of football games, but it was so much fun to play that game with other people. So I guess that one was mine, and I didn't know if you guys were huge into the PlayStation launch either.
No, I was. I had followed it loosely, and launches, I guess I had never really thought much into, what's this system launching? You could have put anything out. You could have put the biggest pile of shit out with any console, and I still would have been geared up to receive it. But yeah, it was around the PlayStation time that I really started to notice, and the magazines were hyping up these games, and like Jeremy said, everywhere you went, if I went to any department store in town, if I went a few miles down the road to the mall or another department store, that PlayStation kiosk was there. I don't know how much money they sank into making sure those things were in every hole in the wall in Virginia where I grew up. But yeah, job well done on that. But the launch I got the most excited about in terms of a multitude of titles. I always looked forward to when a new Nintendo system came, the inevitable Mario game that got either packaged with it, was out at launch, or was coming shortly after. But the first real launch that I was excited for multiple games, it was that Dreamcast launch. I knew it came with House of the Dead 2, which I loved at the arcade, and I couldn't wait to play at home. Big light gun fan. I never actually got the light gun to play it with, but it still played so well with the controller. I knew they had Mortal Kombat Gold, which kind of brought together the first three. I was excited about Power Stone from what I had seen of it, and the little demo type videos I had seen, and rightfully so was I excited about that one. And I was excited about Sonic Adventure, which I had absolutely no reason to be excited about, it seemed. And there are a couple other less popular titles. I was really geared up for Hydro Thunder, and I remember Blue Stinger was I bought that one probably I got my console, and with the at Christmas, and with some of the money I got for Christmas, I got that Blue Stinger not too long after. And well, I haven't looked back, and maybe I shouldn't look back. I enjoyed it at the time. But yeah, that and not to mention that you could get online with that Dreamcast. That was it. That was the launch for me. That was when I really started to pay attention and follow a console closely before it even came out.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I mean, I was into the PlayStation, but again, at that point, I was working in a retail store, so I was living, eating, breathing, sleeping PlayStation. That's all I did all day. I'd go to work and I'd sell people on it, and I'd have to, since there were only a handful of new games, I pretty much played every new game when it came out for the first year of the system, because I think by the end of the first year there were still only maybe 50 games total, and a lot of them weren't all that good. But I still thought of it as just like, yeah, that's what that was my job at the time, and I was into it, but I wasn't in love with the PlayStation yet. It was, the Dreamcast was the one for me too, that I don't know what it was about it. I don't know if it was, I mean, Soul Calibur was definitely the launch title that got me to buy it, day one, but it was a system that for some reason it felt right, and that's why when it, had its amazing tragic early demise as soon as the PlayStation 2 came out and blew it away, I was kind of depressed about that, and that was one of the reasons actually I stopped working in game retail, because
Really?
I felt awful. I mean, I left anyway because there's no money in it, but that was beside the point. I didn't go somewhere where there was money in it till way later, but I was all sold on the Dreamcast. It was the system. I was like, I'm going to play this system, and it's going to be the next huge thing, and I loved it. And it was literally the day after it launched, we were given a whole bunch of promotional materials for the PlayStation 2, and the Dreamcast was pushed back in the back corner of the store, and we were not supposed to give it any window space or anything else. We were supposed to really tell everyone. We were supposed to call everyone who had pre-bought a Dreamcast and tell them to go ahead and trade their Dreamcast in, because we're going to have a much better system in 5 months or whatever. And I found that depressing, because I really liked my Dreamcast. I think Power Stone and Power Stone 2 are still two of the most fun games to ever be created.
Oh, yeah.
I think Choo Choo Rocket, which was on one of the games that was the first online playable game on that system, I believe, was incredible. I mean, there's a lot of games on it that I think hold up really well still. But, things happen, and I clearly have a lot more PlayStation 2 games, and there are probably better games on the PlayStation 2 than the Dreamcast. But something about that Dreamcast, it hit all the buttons at the right time, where, like, even though I was still working in game retail, and I shouldn't have been impressed by anything at that point, it was like I was in 100%. I had it launch day. I had my own copy. I was there at midnight selling systems, and I went home at 2 in the morning and plugged mine in immediately and kept, didn't sleep that whole night. Loved it.
Yeah, that Dreamcast launch. See, I wasn't like crazy about the launch because I had actually bought a Japanese Dreamcast system. So I had already had it for, like a year or however long it took to come out in the US. So I could really see for the people that bought that Dreamcast at launch, just how short a lifespan it had, and just how kicked in the gut you would have had to feel for that thing to die as quick as it did, especially with just how many amazing games that, people think about consoles dying today, you attribute to just not enough games or bad games. The Dreamcast had dozens and dozens of just stunning, awesome games, and that thing still died within 2 years. Like it broke the heart of anybody that really, really enjoyed games, and to see especially a Sega system just bite the dust that hard and that fast, it took a while to get over for a lot of people.
Well, Sega did it to themselves by putting out the Saturn the way that it came out. It already had to convince the world, hey, you know what? We've made some mistakes. We put out that 32X. That was funny, right? And then we put out that Sega Saturn that you guys spent $800 on at launch. Yeah, sorry about that. But this new thing's going to be it. We're going to do this right. And so, of course, they, Sony had already mastered the art of, this system is for, true gamers. This system is for adults. This system is for anyone who takes gaming seriously. That system's for kids. And they did the same thing with Dreamcast. They came out and they said, yeah, that system's great, but check this thing out. It's like punching you in the face. I'm like, oh, okay, well, that was cool. That game punched me in the face. And so, yeah, I'm not surprised. Even at the time, like, I was like, yeah, okay, I guess I shouldn't have assumed, like, this system was going to work. Oh, well, joke's on me. But still... it still hurt. It still hurt. I took it personally for whatever crazy reason, and and I decided to move on to something else.
No, I agree. You wanted so bad. I don't know if it was an underdog. I mean, to say it's a reputable company, but at that time, they had so many negatives against them. My beloved Sega CD, I can admit most people didn't care for. The 32X, the Saturn. You wanted to see that comeback. You wanted to see that underdog story play out. And yeah, that was a tough play. It did. I think Jeremy P said it. It felt like a personal failure. I can't believe Blue Stinger didn't take it to the promised land.
Well, shit. I mean, if Resident Evil Code Veronica can't propel a system to survive, I don't know what can. I mean, that came out pretty shortly after the Dreamcast launched in the US, and that was like one of the best Resident Evil games ever made, and it was only on Dreamcast.
Yeah.
I mean, it had a ton of really great exclusives on it. So, yeah, I don't know. It was just kind of crazy. But I'm sure what everyone wants to know, Billy, how psyched were you for the End Zone launch?
Oh, man. How God.
Did you go to the midnight launch?
I didn't make it. I didn't quite. When I got there and I saw the line, I said, I got to get in bed tonight. I can't stick around for this. And you know what? I just completely forgot, and I never managed to go back.
Well, at least all those in both the PlayStation and even though the PlayStation launched with 8 to 10 games, compared to other systems at the time, the Saturn came out with 6, and they didn't get 2 more until almost 4 months later. And the Nintendo 64, if you guys remember, came out with 2 games. They only had 2 games for the longest time. They had Super Mario 64 and Pilot Wing 64, and then that was it for months, and that was all it needed. I mean, those 2 games took that system and launched it in. It never beat the PlayStation as far as sales went, but it crushed everything else, and it was. It's hard to believe 2 games at a launch was acceptable, but it totally worked.
Well, when one of them is literally like one of the best games ever made, I guess you don't need too much more for a while. Like that, Mario 64 kept people busy for a long, long time. And even when I bought my Nintendo 64, it wasn't at launch. It was, I think it was about a year later or something when I finally had the money to get it. I sat and played Mario 64 exclusively, I think, for about 2 or 3 months, even though there was a large library, or a decently large library of games out then. That was one. It was a terrible amount of games to have for the launch of any system. But when you got Mario 64, you don't really need too much else for a while.
No, and I got the 64 at launch. And I never picked up Pilot Wings. I didn't pick up another game for a while. Yeah, that Mario 64, still to this day, infinitely replayable. And there's a reason when you get all the stars and you've pretty much done everything there is to do, you can fire up on the top of the castle and get all those lives. They know you still, you're hooked. They know they've got you. They know, yes, you've accomplished everything there is, but for some reason, you're probably about halfway through the lifetime you're going to spend on this game. You got at least another couple 100 hours to go.
And with the Saturn, just keeping with the theme of Sega is dumb as hell and didn't know how to run a company, the Saturn came out early. Like, it wasn't supposed to actually launch, and a lot of people didn't know it was going to launch. And then I guess they announced at E3 that it was out. It was just out that day. And Toys R Us was the exclusive retailer that had it. You could go out and you could buy one, but it came with, they only had 6 games at launch and nothing else was ready for months after when it was actually supposed to launch later.
Well, it was only 4 retailers. It wasn't just Toys R Us. They were the biggest retailer. Because it was an Electronics Boutique. It was in Babbage's, and it was in one of the chains that wasn't anywhere near me in Maryland at the time. But so all the other big box retailers that at that time were not considered to be important just basically said, well, then I guess we're never going to carry it. And so there were plenty of stores that never, like KB Toys, never carried the Saturn. Even once it was open for everybody to carry, they said, no, if we weren't important enough to get it on the front of this, we don't want it. No thanks.
Well, that's what happens when you piss off your main retail chains of the people that sell your stuff. And just another example of why Sega just kept shooting itself in its own foot over and over again.
Well, next week, we're going to go back farther than the PlayStation. We're going to go back to the Super Nintendo. We haven't been there in quite a while. For the classic Ghoul Patrol, a game I've never played, but the sequel to Zombies Ate My Neighbors, which I have played.
This one's been a long time coming for me because I absolutely hate this game. Zombies Ate My Neighbors is one of my favorite games of all time. So I've got a lot to say about this game and just how empty and how unfun it is to me. So looking forward to seeing what you guys think.
I wonder what he's going to think of the game. Wonder what Jerry thinks of the game. Well, if you have not played Zombies Ate My Neighbors, there is a full video review of it on retrovania.net, so please check it out. So you get yourself pregame for the next show in 2 weeks.
Don't play Ghoul Patrol.
So yeah, check us out on retrovania.net and send us some questions if you have any listener questions. We do like to answer them so we don't talk about system launches for 20 minutes. And we will see you in 2 weeks.
And so Aloha's evil plan is thwarted. The cratered planet is rescued, and the first chapter of our story draws to a close. The people are free to live in peace. Now our time is up. So long, everyone.